Welcome to Inside the Firewall podcast, powered by CyberGlobal. Inside the Firewall goes beyond the headlines to uncover what it truly takes to protect businesses in today's fast-changing digital world. In each episode, we will bring you candid conversations with the CyberGlobal leadership team, security engineers, partners, and thought leaders who are shaping the future of cybersecurity today. From compliance and governance to real-world incident response, we'll show you how CyberGlobal's expertise and technology are helping organizations build stronger, safer, and more resilient foundations. Whether you're a business leader, IT professional, or simply curious about what's next in cybersecurity, you'll leave with insights and strategies you can put to work right away. Join us for this episode of Inside the Firewall, where innovation meets protection and the future of digital security comes to life. Here is your host, Justin Starbird.
Welcome back to Inside the Firewall, powered by CyberGlobal. I'm your host, Justin Starbird, and I am excited because today I get to welcome Dan Gazzi from North Carolina franchise of CyberGlobal. Dan, great to have you on, man.
Justin, appreciate you having me on as well.
This is pretty exciting because we've talked to the founders, we've talked to, Ken Boyce, the CEO of North America, and, now getting to learn a little bit more about the franchise itself and the model of CyberGlobal. Talk a little bit about your background and what led you to, finding CyberGlobal as an opportunity, both to, invest in as a franchisee and now, to help grow it.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for that intro as well. Yeah, I would say my journey started actually right around this time last year, October 2024. I was managing a global sales and marketing team. I come from an education and ed tech background for most of my career, and we ended up being a line item budget reduction. So 47 people got laid off at the beginning of the month, and whole division was shut down, and just found myself sitting on the sidelines again after promising myself I would never let that happen in my career again.
Sure.
And as you know, in sales, that tends to happen, but really just took some time to work on what was going to be next and focus on how I can diversify myself beyond just being a traditional corporate employee. So I dug back into my network, reached out to some of my connections that I know had been doing this same process and going through the same pieces I was about to go through being unemployed, and really just built a good network around me to just kind of think about what was going to be next. And I always say I had an accidental career in publishing for 17 years because I answered the right phone call, and I found myself accidentally talking to a franchise consultant, which I thought was actually going to be just a standard recruiter. And we just kind of went through the process. He walked me through what franchising meant. He walked me through what the possibilities could be, where I was financially and able to afford for my own sake. And, kind of talked me through and said, basically, this is not a one-day journey. It's not a two-day journey. It's going to take some time to think out and appropriately find that right path. So I still was looking at the corporate space. I was looking at service industries for the franchise space as well. And then ultimately CyberGlobal ended up being the right opportunity for me, where it fit my background very well for managed services, which is what I had been doing in the education and ed tech space for many years as well. So managing offshore projects and product teams. And it really was just the right fit at the right time, and met the founders, met Ken, and was bought into the vision at that point.
That's great. Cybersecurity as a franchise, though, that hadn't been done before. I mean, You're talking to, you mentioned your advisor that you're mistakenly talking to, but thinking it's a recruiter. It's not McDonald's. It's, what made you think, that's what I want to do? Yeah.
It was real interesting having those conversations. Again, they were a startup of a startup, really, beyond just saying cybersecurity is a franchise, right? They were not here stateside yet. So it was even further back in the process. Some other ones would probably be from a services perspective. What really stood out to me was that cybersecurity as an industry itself is only growing, right? It's not going to retract. I was looking for something that was also going to be recession proof, that was going to be not having to focus on selling a product, that was not going to have to worry about having a brick and mortar to set up. I had some very, very strong requirements. Again, I had in my entire life, I've never thought of myself as being an entrepreneur that wanted to start anything from scratch, because I didn't think I had the ideas for it, frankly. I was happy managing other people's companies for them, or their sales teams for them, and, making them a lot of money and a little bit in my pocket compared to what I was earning, on the end of the bottom line. But what really stood out to me was I understood the model. I knew how to sell services as a product in of itself. And I understood the P&L. I understood the back end operations of what it was going to take to be very effectively talking to people. It's a consultative sales process, right? It's not like there's just it's a black box, so to speak. So for me, I already understood this side of it, right? I didn't understand the cyber piece. I learned the cyber piece as we were going, and I'm dangerous enough now to be able to at least handle those first couple calls myself. But the team itself is amazing. We have from start to finish, from the technical sales process to the project delivery to the reports, and then ultimately the wrap up. 100% of that is handled by corporate for me. So I don't have to think about a technical sales call when it's out of my own scope of my understanding. I just need to manage the client relationship piece. So for me, that was, when I heard all of that, I met the team. I got to understand that I did not have to be this expert in cybersecurity. It was really what ultimately drove me to say that this was probably going to be the best fit. And thankfully, it's been good so far.
Yeah. Oh, well, one of the things that we've talked about offline was the importance of being local. And, essentially as a franchisee, you have a territory, and you have over the last year really started to position yourself as the go-to resource for that because of the systems and processes that are behind you. Let's talk a little bit about that localization for cybersecurity. What is that like when you get to talk to somebody in your own backyard and are like, hey, I can help you with that?
Yeah, it's so important to have that localization, as you mentioned. So I made the decision to purchase the rights for all of North Carolina. So, I own all of the borders that are internal here for that. In some different markets, they're actually more regionalized. We do have some that are not a full state, for example. So it's kind of a varied process. And I'm not sure if Ken mentioned this. Ken would be a better authority to talk about it, but that's different from many franchising models as well. And even the ones I looked at where you'd be buying zip codes. I would have bought zip codes of Raleigh. I would have bought a potential zip code of some Raleigh-Durham area. I would have never had a whole state in most franchising models. For me, that was very attractive, that I could be the local advisor for my entire state. And, it does give us this opportunity to get into the community more, through different networking events. I'm a member of multiple associations that are just North Carolina based. So I don't have to worry about this huge focus around just, well, what's cybersecurity mean for the US or the world? I can focus in what it means for RTP, the research triangle, right? I can focus in on exactly what it means for the companies that are here, the pharma that's here, for the Charlotte market with the banking and insurance. I can focus in on those markets, the Greensboro market, Winston-Salem. I don't have to think and worry about anything that's not happening. And then, things happen nationally, of course, right? But even on the regional and local level, being able to understand and be that local resource as well as that local expert is very important.
Now, you have taken sort of an interesting approach to this too, where not only are you going out there and part of these associations and working with folks, networking that way, but you've also developed a number of partnerships with other industries where maybe they have access to the specific clients, and now you're a referral partner. Talk a little bit about that and what that's led to so far.
It's been so great from the perspective of being able to focus on growth as opposed to just focusing on an individual company or even just one individual industry where, I'm a small team of one right now with the exception of what's internal that's provided to me. So being able to build and develop local partnerships here with some of the financial service professionals in our industry that are in North Carolina, as well as some of the IT focused companies, a few of the other insurance as well, has been great because not only can I tap into the ability to work with someone that again is local here in North Carolina, but it's giving me an opportunity to meet their list of clients beyond just what I would be able to find on myself or be able to do just in, as this smaller team. And, it's allowed me to grow in a way that I can control as well without necessarily having to bring on a headcount of say 20 people, like a lot of other franchises would have to worry about if they're brick and mortar. So it's kept my payroll obviously in check. It's kept my expenses in check, and it's given me this great opportunity to tap into a network of clients that I wouldn't have had on my own.
Well, and it really dovetails well into the vision of CyberGlobal as a global enterprise, in that instead of, yes, of course, we're not saying no to corporate, or Fortune 500 companies, but it allows you to also, be the trusted advisor to these small to medium-sized businesses that, often don't realize that they are even in the crosshairs of a nefarious act or a cyber threat. What is that sort of like? You mentioned your educational background and your approach to sales. What has that been like in conversations with folks that didn't realize that their shop could be a target?
Yeah, everybody always has that I'm too small to care mentality, or why would I be a target? I'm too small. Well, 43% of targets are small to medium-sized businesses, and 60% of businesses that are in the small to medium space will not survive a cyber attack after 6 months and will shut shop. So they're a target. The hackers don't care. They don't care what size your company is when they're targeting. It's just when they do their blanket out their own campaigns, right? Hate to say it, but they have their own campaigns that they target, right? They target specific industries. They target specific output of just whatever they can get. Oh, we got one. We created a breach here. They don't care if you're a company of 5 people or 5,000 people. You're going to get the same ransomware request if they have your data, right? So I think it's been a very interesting, again, I wasn't a small business owner prior to this, but having that small business ownership my own self now and talking to small business owners, it's a completely different conversation than say when I was in corporate. When I was in corporate, I was part of 40,000 employee companies, and my extent
you
of
had the trainings on don't click that
exactly
email.
Yeah, don't click the phishing email if it looks like it's probably phishing. Make sure you forward it, right? They don't get that. There's a lot of that training doesn't exist if you're in a smaller company, and it doesn't. And that's a huge opportunity for just a company like ourselves. Even if nothing else, we're spreading the word, being in the communities, going to these events, and it does become a little bit of a scare tactic, of course, when you're talking about these data and figures. And you hope people are listening, right? You hope that they're going to go back and say, maybe I should bring a CyberGlobal, or obviously. We've got great other cybersecurity companies in North Carolina. If they're not going to bring me in, hopefully they're bringing in a competitor to help. Would love it to be me, of course, but if nothing else, securing everybody that we can secure in North Carolina and beyond.
As you've continued to develop your approach and you've talked to more companies, more businesses, more folks that are becoming aware of what the threats are, which is crazy because, realize that cybersecurity is an industry that's 30 years old at this point, but the game continues to change. How do you, alternate between you mentioned the scare tactics with also like, hey, I'm your friend on this. Like, yeah, our guys work just as hard at stopping it as the bad guys do at getting in?
It's a good question. It becomes an informational campaign, of course, that a year ago, I would have never thought I'd be standing here talking about cybersecurity. And, the crash courses of learning about it is really just that as much of this as I know and can pass it forward, I want to make sure I'm doing that as well to give them that opportunity to understand that you are a target, right? Beyond just that feeling of, it has to be more than a scare tactic, of course. But, thankfully, many of the companies that we do work with, especially if they're collecting private information or if they have an application, many of them are already aware of the things they have to do. And then in certain industries, it's a requirement as well. Being able to continue to be that trusted local advisor to them is great, but also using them as a tool for a smaller company that may not realize it, especially when I'm attending these events. I've been going to chamber events. I've been going against some of these other IT conferences. They usually get it. But like if you're at a chamber event or when I'm at one of those, being able to just talk about what I'm doing, it's eye-opening, right? Because then all of a sudden you may be at a table and everybody starts talking about it. And then everybody always wants to talk to the cyber guy, which is good too. So,
all right. So talk about at this point, you've been at it over a year. you've had some successes.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what you've been able to catch and prevent and the high fives that have happened.
Yeah, High Five is great. First client that I was able to work with just so happened to be in the ed tech space. We met at a conference, positioned at the same table together. We started talking, and ultimately turned out he needed a penetration test, which was for that he does annually. So he met our team. He felt comfortable with our team, his team, and our team came together. And it was a pretty in-depth project. It was a longer one compared to what some of the shorter ones could be. It was over 20-day project. So we got really deep into all of their applications that are student-facing and student-based applications where it's collecting information. The systems themselves are doing a lot of back-end processing, capturing credit card information. So you name it, all of the personal information that a hacker wants to get at. And as a parent as well, it was great to be working on this kind of stuff, to know I'm securing potentially products my own children may use. So it was a great one. And then on the follow-up, when we were done, obviously the most glowing remarks are the ones that can come from the customer themselves. When we were done with everything, we had the debrief. We met with him again, and the first words out of the client's mouth was, "You found things my last two vendors didn't find." That right there for me let me know not only did I make the right decision becoming a CyberGlobal franchise, but I'm glad that I was able to help my new client secure pieces of their platform that may have been a potential for a breach from previous results. So it's been great just being able to say that I can help potentially solve some problems for companies like that.
That's awesome. And I think that's so neat to, of course, hear about the success and to know that you've put really your money where your mouth is by investing. There had to be some trepidation to that, like investing into a little bit of an unknown. It's not like, again, it's not like it was Taco Bell or something where you were, you knew what the revenue was, you knew what the opportunity was. What was that like? What have you felt now? What was your goal to get out of it?
Yeah, obviously make money. Number one goal for all of this, of course. I've got a 5-year plan for myself. I positioned that when I came into having these conversations here with not only CyberGlobal, but even the other franchise that I was looking at. I positioned that I want a 5-year plan. I want to be able to make enough money, be successful enough that within 5 years I can sell and then move on to what's going to be next. Now, again, obviously that's a fluid timeline, but that's my game plan. I think there's opportunity to be able to be very successful here with this. I have been so far. I do think it's going to be going on an upward trajectory as I continue to grow, and then ultimately be at a place where I know that I can pass this on to somebody else that can take it to the next level when I'm ready as well too. So, the support's been there for all of that. We're, not sure you're aware, but we have a campaign that's actually happening where they're raising money on our behalf through WeFunder. I've actually invested in that as well, beyond just purchasing my own franchise. I did invest on the other side of this too. Seeing the value add that can come back to me as a franchise owner has been great. The team's been great through all of that. And, ultimately, again, I'm invested on both sides of this.
Sure.
I couldn't be any more in if I tried.
Well, let's talk about that for just a second, because they are, live on WeFunder as of this week. We'll probably post this next week, as content, for this. What was that like when, the franchise that you're investing in is so confident in the expansion that they want to do a campaign to help support, that growth and IT support?
Yeah, no, it's been, honestly, it's been great being part of that, to see that they didn't just stagnate and just say, we're just going to bring in franchise. They're thinking 3 steps ahead. What's going to be next to support us with, obviously the growth. I mean, they could have gone the VC route. They could have gone, other private equity routes. But I think the reality of them wanting to open this up to a different way, right? They're different already by being a cybersecurity franchise. They want to be different in how they're going to raise those funds to support us. And it's been positioned back that it's going to be support just on the franchise level. For me, it made perfect sense to make that investment, not only in them, but really back into myself and to my other franchise owners. We meet weekly as franchise owners. We talk about these things as well, and what the support is. And, frankly, it's been good.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of now you're positioning yourself to have a piece of the growth of the company
Yeah.
too, not just your territory. You can you can control what you can control, and so it's so interesting to know that you also supported the global campaign to go deeper and wider in all of this, and to that extent, the investors getting a piece of the company as well. Yeah. And thwarting these nefarious efforts to attack small to medium-sized businesses. I think it's tough to make cybersecurity pull at your heartstrings, but when you can, back to your statistic of the 43% of the attacks are on those size businesses, and so many fail or go out of business within 6 months. I mean, it does have an emotional toll on folks that are impacted, because all of a sudden, without notice, you've lost your company, you've lost your business, you've lost your job.
Yeah, it's not sexy and it's not pretty, but it's been good. And again, even some of the others. There's a company that was in the UK, 158-year-old logistics company, and they shut down because of one bad password. 158 years. I mean, it's sad to see those things happen, and it really is. The more that myself or the other franchise owners can be out there being, evangelizing the message of cybersecurity in our local markets, hopefully we can prevent that next one from happening. Again, most of these small businesses are probably not 158 years old, but they're going to suffer the same challenges and problems of that company by not securing themselves properly, just because, again, they think, I'm not going to be a target.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on being a year into this.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new investment. Of course, your goal is to grow the business, but really, you mentioned in 5 years, you'd like to, look at having this out as a multiple and an asset to be able to turn into either, a different business or something more. What are you most looking forward to as we end 2025 and go into 26?
Yeah, I think the future for us is, I think, bright. I'll be bringing on some sales folks as well to help expand and get a bigger reach where I just can't handle myself, as the load increases itself. So I will be expanding my team with that. And then next year and beyond, really just starting to look towards the future of, what I can do to help secure companies in North Carolina and beyond too as well.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about, such a wide breadth of topics today. I think it's so fascinating to hear your perspective on the franchise model. I also love that you invested in the new crowdfunding campaign on WeFunder. Thank you for sharing your expertise. This has been great.
Appreciate it. It's been a pleasure being on. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking to you again, hopefully in the future.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, on behalf of my guest today, Dan Gazzi, the franchisee of North Carolina for CyberGlobal, you've been listening to Inside the Firewall, powered by CyberGlobal. Until next time. On behalf of our host and our guest today, thank you for listening to the latest episode of Inside the Firewall, powered by CyberGlobal. To hear more episodes or learn more, visit us online at the link below or via our social media channels.